Apache man rides with new girlfriend but stops when he sees his pregnant ex-wife carrying firewood. Daniel had always loved the feeling of riding his motorcycle. From the time he was young, the sound of the engine and the rush of wind against his face gave him a strange sense of peace. It made him feel strong, independent, and in control. Whenever life became heavy or confusing, he would take his bike and ride without a clear destination. The open road helped him think. It helped him breathe. After his divorce, riding became more than just a hobby. It became his escape. The end of his marriage had not happened in a single day. It was not one big fight or one sudden mistake. It was a slow breaking apart. Small arguments had grown into long nights of silence. Financial pressure had added stress. Words were spoken in anger that could not be taken back. Both Daniel and Mara had changed over the years, but instead of growing together, they had slowly grown in different directions. Daniel often told himself that the divorce was the only solution. He believed they were no longer happy. He believed they were both tired. When the papers were finally signed, he felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. He told himself it was better this way. Still, when he returned to his small rented room after the separation, the silence felt different. It was not peaceful. It was empty. He tried to ignore that feeling. He spent more time outside, riding his motorcycle through quiet roads near his hometown. He told his friends he was fine. He said he was ready for a fresh start, and for a while he almost believed it. Then he met Liza. Liza was different from Mara in many ways. Yeah, she was cheerful and full of energy. She laughed easily and did not carry heavy worries in her voice. When Daniel spoke about his dreams of starting a small repair shop someday, she listened with bright eyes and encouraged him. She believed in moving forward and not looking back too much. At first, Daniel was careful. He did not want to rush into another relationship, but Liza's warmth slowly pulled him in. She admired his confidence on the road. She enjoyed riding with him, holding on to his waist as they traveled through the countryside. With her, he felt lighter. He felt like the past was slowly losing its power over him. One afternoon, the sky was clear and the air was cool. It was the kind of day that made everything look hopeful. The fields outside town were bright green, and farmers worked slowly under the sun. The road stretched long and peaceful ahead of them. Daniel adjusted his helmet and started the engine. Liza climbed onto the back of the motorcycle, smiling as she wrapped her arms around him. "Where are we going today?" she asked playfully. "Let's just ride," he replied. "No plan, just the road." As they moved forward, the wind carried away the noise of daily life. Daniel felt free again. He felt like he was leaving behind the difficult months that had followed his divorce. He had stopped visiting the old neighborhood where he and Mara once lived. He avoided conversations about her. He told himself that the chapter was closed. But sometimes, when he lay awake at night, he remembered their last serious argument. Mara had told him she was pregnant. The memory still felt heavy. At the time, Daniel had been overwhelmed by anger and doubt. Their relationship had already been falling apart. Trust between them was weak. When she shared the news, instead of feeling joy, he felt confusion. Instead of asking how she was feeling, he questioned everything. He had asked harsh questions that hurt her deeply. He had walked away before truly listening. Even now, months later, he did not know how to feel about that moment. Part of him believed he had been pushed too far. Another part of him quietly wondered if he had reacted too quickly. But riding with Liza made it easier not to think about those things. As the motorcycle moved smoothly along the road that afternoon, Daniel felt proud of the new direction his life seemed to be taking. Liza talked excitedly about small plans, maybe traveling to another town next month, maybe saving money together for something better. She spoke about the future like it was something bright and simple. Daniel liked hearing that. After so much stress, simple felt good. The road they were traveling on passed near the old farming area just outside town. Daniel had not taken this route in a long time. It used to be familiar to him because it led close to the small house he once shared with Mara. Without thinking too much, he chose that path again. Maybe he wanted to prove to himself that it no longer affected him. The countryside looked the same. The same tall trees lined the road. The same small roadside shops stood quietly under faded signs. Life had continued, even after his marriage ended. As they rode, Liza tightened her arms around him and rested her head lightly against his back. Daniel felt a calm confidence. He believed he had made the right choices. He believed he deserved happiness after years of struggle. He did not realize that sometimes life waits for the exact moment when a person feels most certain, and then gently challenges that certainty. The sun began to lower slightly in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. The wind grew softer. Daniel slowed the motorcycle just a little, enjoying the peaceful view of the fields. He noticed farmers in the distance carrying tools home. It was a normal afternoon, nothing unusual. Inside his mind, however, there was a quiet space he avoided visiting. It was the space where memories of Mara still lived. He remembered how she used to wait at the door when he returned from long rides. He remembered how she worried about his safety. He remembered how she used to sit beside him and talk about small dreams, building a better home, raising a family, living simply but happily. Those memories did not disappear just because he had signed divorce papers, but he pushed them aside. He focused on the present, on the steady vibration of the motorcycle, on the road ahead, on Liza's warm presence behind him. He convinced himself that moving forward meant not looking back. For a moment he even smiled under his helmet. Maybe everything had happened for a reason. Maybe life was giving him a second chance at happiness. He did not know that within minutes, that peaceful ride would change the direction of his thoughts. For now, he rode confidently down the familiar road, believing that the past was behind him, unaware that it was only a short distance ahead, waiting quietly where the dusty roadside met the fading afternoon light. The motorcycle moved steadily along the dusty road, its engine humming in a calm, steady rhythm. Daniel kept his eyes forward, enjoying the quiet afternoon. The sky had turned a softer shade of blue, and the sunlight was no longer harsh. It felt like the day was slowly preparing to rest. Liza leaned closer to him and pointed toward the fields. "It's beautiful here," she said. "You're lucky you grew up around this place." "It used to feel smaller when I was younger," he replied. "Now it feels peaceful." For the first time in months, he felt calm without forcing himself to feel that way. He believed he had finally learned how to separate his past from his present. He believed he was stronger now. As they approached a narrow stretch of the road where the surface became uneven, Daniel slowed down. Small stones crunched under the tires. A light wind carried dust gently across the path. Then something caught his attention. At first it was just a distant figure walking along the roadside, someone moving slowly, carefully. The person seemed to be carrying something heavy on their back. Daniel did not think much of it at first. It was common to see villagers carrying firewood or farming tools, but as they moved closer, his grip on the handlebars tightened. The way the person walked felt familiar. The small pause between steps. The way the shoulders leaned slightly forward under the weight. His heart began to beat faster without him understanding why. He squinted slightly, trying to see more clearly, and then he saw her face. It was Mara. The world around him suddenly felt quiet, even though the motorcycle engine was still running. He could not hear Liza's soft humming anymore. He could not feel the wind in the same way. All he saw was Mara walking alone beside the road. She was carrying a large bundle of firewood tied together with rope. The wood rested heavily against her back. One hand held the rope tightly near her shoulder to keep it balanced. The other hand was placed gently under her round belly. She was heavily pregnant. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Without thinking, he slowly eased his hand off the throttle. The motorcycle began to slow down. Liza noticed immediately. "Why are you slowing?" she asked softly. His eyes were fixed ahead. Mara had not yet noticed them. She was walking carefully, step by step, her sandals pressing into the dusty ground. Her face looked tired. A few loose strands of hair stuck to her forehead because of sweat. Every few steps she paused slightly, adjusting the weight of the wood. There was no one walking beside her, no one helping. The road around her was almost empty. Daniel felt a sudden dryness in his throat. The image did not match what he had imagined in his mind over the past months. He had convinced himself that she was managing fine, that she had support, that someone else must be helping her. But here she was, alone, carrying a heavy load while expecting a child. "Daniel?" Liza asked again, her voice more serious now. "Do you know her?" "Yes," he finally said. Liza followed his gaze and studied the woman carefully. "Is that?" He nodded slightly. Mara was now only a short distance ahead. The motorcycle was moving slowly enough that Daniel could see the tiredness in her eyes. She looked thinner than he remembered. Her steps were steady but clearly heavy. Daniel's chest tightened with a feeling he could not easily name. It was not only surprise. It was not only guilt. It was something deeper, a mix of regret, concern, and confusion. She had been standing in their old living room, her eyes filled with tears, trying to explain herself while he spoke in anger. He had walked out without fully listening. Now, months later, she stood in front of him again, not arguing, not crying, just silently carrying a burden. Liza's arms slowly loosened from around his waist. She sensed that this moment was important. "What are you going to do?" she asked gently. Daniel did not know. Part of him wanted to keep riding, to pretend he had not seen her, to continue forward like he had promised himself. It would be easier. It would avoid uncomfortable words and painful memories. But another part of him felt rooted to that spot. He could not ignore what was right in front of him. Mara shifted the firewood again. The movement caused her to slightly lose balance for a second. She caught herself quickly, but the effort was clear on her face. That small moment decided everything. Daniel pulled the motorcycle to the side of the road and turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt loud. Dust slowly settled around them. Mara finally noticed the motorcycle stopping nearby. She looked up, curious at first. Then her eyes widened slightly when she recognized Daniel. For a brief second, neither of them moved. The space between them felt filled with unspoken words. Lisa carefully stepped off the motorcycle. She stood a short distance away, giving them room but watching quietly. Daniel removed his helmet slowly. His hands felt heavier than usual. He placed the helmet on the seat and took a few steps forward. Mara straightened her posture as much as she could. She tried to look composed. But her breathing was slightly uneven from the effort of walking. He noticed how carefully she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. He noticed the strain in her fingers as she held the rope. He had not imagined this scene. He had not prepared for it. "Hi," Daniel said softly. The word felt small compared to the moment. Mara nodded politely. "Hello," too calm. There was no anger in her tone, no dramatic reaction, just quiet acknowledgement. That calmness made Daniel feel even more uncomfortable. He looked at the firewood. "You're carrying all that alone?" She gave a simple nod. "It needs to be done before evening." Daniel glanced at her belly again. The reality of it felt stronger up close. This was not just an idea anymore. It was real. The child was real. The responsibility was real. 1,000 thoughts ran through his mind. Why hadn't he come to check on her before? Why had he assumed she was fine? Why had pride kept him away? Liza stepped a little closer, but she remained silent. She understood that this was not her moment to speak first. The road around them remained quiet, as if even nature was waiting to see what would happen next. Daniel felt the weight of the past pressing down on him, heavier than the firewood on Mara's back. And for the first time since the divorce, he realized that moving forward did not erase what he had left behind. Standing there on the dusty roadside watching his pregnant ex-wife struggle alone, Daniel understood that some moments in life demand more than silence. They demand a choice. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The air felt heavy, even though the evening breeze had started to cool the road. Daniel stood in front of Mara, unsure of what to say next. He had imagined many possible meetings in his mind over the past months, but none of them looked like this. None of them included her standing alone, carrying firewood while expecting a child. He took a slow breath and stepped closer. "Let me help you with that," he said gently, pointing toward the bundle on her back. Mara hesitated. It was not anger in her eyes. It was something more complicated, pride mixed with tiredness. She had clearly learned to manage on her own. Accepting help now, especially from him, was not simple. "It's fine," she replied softly. "I can manage." Daniel shook his head. "You shouldn't have to." He reached carefully toward the rope and slowly lifted the weight off her shoulders. The bundle was heavier than he expected. He felt the strain in his arms almost immediately. For a brief moment, he wondered how long she had been walking like that. As soon as the weight was removed, Mara placed one hand on her lower back and let out a quiet breath. She did not complain, but the relief on her face was clear. Daniel placed the firewood gently on the ground. He looked at her again, noticing small details he had ignored before. How thin her wrists seemed, how her sandals were slightly worn, how tired her eyes looked even though she tried to appear strong. "Why are you doing this alone?" he asked, his voice lower now. Mara avoided his eyes at first. She looked down at the dusty road. "'Cause there's no one else to do it," she answered simply. Those words stayed in the air between them. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He had spent months telling himself that she must have support, that her family was nearby, that someone was helping her. It had been easier to believe that than to ask directly. "Where is your cousin?" he asked quietly. "I thought she was staying with you?" "She moved to another town for work," Mara replied. "It's better for her there." "And your parents?" "They visit when they can," she said. "But they're old. I don't want them worrying." Her voice was calm, but Daniel could hear the effort behind it. She was choosing her words carefully, not to sound like she was blaming him. Lisa stood beside the motorcycle, watching silently. She felt like an outsider in a moment that clearly belonged to Daniel and Mara. She could sense that this was not just about firewood or a short meeting on the road. This was about unfinished feelings and responsibilities that had not disappeared. Daniel rubbed his forehead slowly. "You could have called me," he said. Her eyes were steady. For what? The question was not sharp. It was honest. He struggled to answer. For help, he said after a pause. You made it clear you didn't want to be involved, she replied quietly. Her words were not loud, but they carried weight. Daniel remembered the last serious conversation they had before he left. He had been overwhelmed with doubt. When she told him she was pregnant, instead of reacting with support, he had questioned everything. He had allowed anger and confusion to guide him. He had walked away before giving himself time to think clearly. At that time, he believed distance was the solution. He thought space would make everything easier. Standing here now, he realized distance had only made things harder. I was confused, he said slowly. Everything was falling apart. I didn't know what to think. Mara gave a small nod. I know. That response surprised him. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only understanding. I didn't want to force you to stay, she continued. You had already decided. Daniel looked down at the ground. The truth in her words stung. Liza finally stepped a little closer. She spoke gently, careful not to interfere too much. You shouldn't be carrying heavy things like this, she said to Mara. It's not safe. Thank you, I'm careful. There was no jealousy or anger in her tone. She was simply concerned. That made the moment even more serious. Daniel turned back to Mara. How far is your house from here? Just 10 minutes more, she replied. I walk slowly. He glanced at her belly again. The child was not an idea anymore. It was a living reality growing inside her. Whether he had doubts before or not, he could not deny what he was seeing now. Have you been going to your checkups? He asked. Yes, she said. The clinic in town. Alone? Most of the time. The answers were simple, but each one made Daniel feel smaller. He had been riding freely through town, laughing with friends, planning trips with Liza, convincing himself he deserved peace. Meanwhile, the woman who once shared his life had been quietly managing everything on her own. He felt ashamed of how little he knew about her current life. Why didn't you tell me? He asked again, though he already knew the answer. Mara looked at him with calm eyes. Because I didn't want to beg anyone to care. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had never seen her this strong before. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. The sun was beginning to lower further, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The light fell gently across the road, creating long shadows behind them. For a moment, Daniel imagined what would have happened if he had not taken this route today. If he had chosen another road, he might have continued believing that everything was fine. He might have stayed comfortable in his new life without ever seeing this reality. But now that he had seen it, he could not pretend. I'll carry this to your house, he said firmly, lifting the bundle of firewood again. You don't have to. I know, he replied, but I want to. Less confusion, more clarity. Liza watched him carefully. She could see that something inside him had shifted. The confidence he had earlier in the day was now replaced by reflection. I'll wait here, Liza said quietly. Take your time. Daniel gave her a grateful look. He walked beside Mara slowly, carrying the firewood while matching her careful pace. The road felt longer now, not because of distance, but because of the thoughts filling his mind. He noticed how she walked, steady but cautious. He noticed how she occasionally rested her hand on her belly, almost as if speaking silently to the child. After a few steps, he spoke again. Are you okay? She looked at him with a faint, tired smile. I'm managing. He wanted to fix everything in a single moment, but he knew life did not work that way. As they continued walking side by side, Daniel realized something important. This was not about going back to the past. It was not about undoing mistakes in one day. It was about responsibility. It was about not looking away when things became difficult. It was about standing up when it mattered most. For months, he had believed that starting over meant forgetting what hurt. Now he understood that true strength was not in forgetting. It was in facing what he had avoided. The quiet road that once felt like freedom now felt like a test. And Daniel knew that whatever choice he made next would shape more than just his own future. It would shape the life of the child who had not yet entered the world, but was already changing him. The walk to Mara's house felt longer than Daniel remembered. The road was narrow, with small stones and dry leaves scattered along the sides. The evening light grew softer with every step, and the sky slowly turned orange and pink. Daniel carried the heavy bundle of firewood on his shoulder, but the real weight he felt was inside his chest. Mara walked beside him quietly. Her steps were careful and slow. Every few moments she placed her hand on her lower back as if easing the pressure. Daniel noticed everything now, the small details he would have ignored before. He realized how much he had missed simply by staying away. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. How many months? He asked gently. Almost 8, she replied. 8 months. The number echoed in his mind. That meant the child would be born soon. Very soon. He tried to calculate the months in his head. 8 months of doctor visits. 8 months of changes. 8 months of sleeping alone at night. 8 months of carrying not only a child but responsibility. And everything is okay? He asked carefully. Yes, Mara said. The doctor says the baby is healthy. A small sense of relief passed through him, but it was quickly followed by guilt. He should have known this already. He should not be hearing it for the first time on a dusty road near sunset. They reached a small path that led to her house. It was simple, with a small wooden gate and a tin roof. Daniel had been there many times in the past, but now it looked different. Maybe it wasn't the house that had changed. Maybe it was him. He stepped inside the yard and placed the firewood near the wall where other pieces were stacked neatly. It was clear she had been managing everything carefully. Nothing looked careless. Everything had its place. Mara slowly sat down on a small bench outside the door. She looked tired, but she tried not to show it too much. Daniel stood in front of her, unsure whether to sit or remain standing. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "You shouldn't be doing all this alone." She looked at him for a moment before answering. "Sometimes life doesn't give you much choice." Her words were calm, but they held quiet strength. Daniel sat down on a small stool across from her. For a while, neither of them spoke. The evening sounds filled the silence. Birds returning to trees, distant voices from other houses, the soft rustling of wind. "I've been thinking a lot," Daniel finally said, "about everything." "And?" He struggled to find the right words. "I made decisions when I was angry. I didn't take time to think clearly. I let pride guide me." She listened carefully, but did not interrupt. "When you told me about the pregnancy, I should have reacted differently," he continued. "Instead of asking questions with anger, I should have listened." Mara's eyes softened slightly. "We were both tired, Daniel. It wasn't only you." He shook his head gently. "Still, I left." She did not deny it. The truth hung between them, but it did not feel like an attack. It felt like something that simply needed to be acknowledged. After a short pause, Mara spoke again. "I didn't expect you to come back," she said. "I didn't expect anything." Her voice was steady, but Daniel could sense the quiet disappointment behind it. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just real. "I didn't know how to face it," he admitted. Everything felt broken. "And now?" she asked softly. He looked around the small yard, then at her belly. "Now I see that ignoring it didn't fix anything." The warm light spilled gently through the open door. Daniel remembered evenings when they used to sit together and talk about their plans. Life had once felt simple here. "Do you have everything you need?" he asked carefully. "I manage," Mara replied. "The neighbors help sometimes. I sew clothes for extra money. It's enough." The fact that she had been working, even in her condition, made him feel both proud of her strength and ashamed of his absence. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked again, though he knew the answer. She looked at him steadily. "Because I didn't want you to feel forced." "Worst, yes," she said. "I didn't want you to stay out of guilt. If you chose to leave, that was your choice. I didn't want to hold you back." Her honesty surprised him. She had carried everything quietly, not because she was weak, but because she respected his decision, even when it hurt her. At that moment, Liza appeared at the gate. She had walked slowly from where the motorcycle was parked. She did not want to interrupt, but she felt it was time to check on them. She greeted Mara politely. "I hope I'm not disturbing." "No," Mara replied kindly. "You're welcome." She could sense the emotional weight in the air. She looked at Daniel, trying to understand what he was thinking. Daniel stood up. "We were just talking." Liza nodded. She turned to Mara and said gently, "You shouldn't be carrying heavy wood at this stage. Please let someone help you next time." "I'll try." There was no tension between the two women, only quiet understanding. Liza was not blind. She could see that this was not just a meeting between ex-spouses. This was a moment that would shape future decisions. Daniel looked at Liza. "I need to be honest," he said. She waited. "I can't ignore this," he continued. "No matter what happened between us, this child is my responsibility." She did not react with anger. She did not raise her voice. She simply listened. "I know," she replied calmly, "and you shouldn't ignore it." Her response surprised him. "I don't want to stand in the way of what's right," she added. "You have to do what you can live with." Mara watched quietly. She had not expected this kind of conversation. She had expected distance, maybe politeness, not responsibility being spoken openly. Daniel felt something shift inside him again. The road he thought he had chosen so confidently earlier that day suddenly felt uncertain. I don't know what the future looks like, he admitted. But I know I can't walk away from this. Mara lowered her eyes for a moment. There was a mix of relief and caution in her expression. She had learned not to expect too much. I'm not asking you to come back, she said softly. I just want peace. For the child. Her words were simple but powerful. Daniel nodded slowly. That's fair. Stars were beginning to appear. The evening felt calm, but inside Daniel, thoughts were moving quickly. He realized that life was not divided into clean chapters. Past and present were connected in ways he could not ignore. Riding away had felt strong at first, but stopping here, facing this moment, felt stronger. As he stood in the small yard, between the woman who once shared his life and the woman who now stood beside him, Daniel understood something clearly. This was not about choosing one person over another. This was about choosing responsibility over comfort. And for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to make that choice.